Trucking's going high-tech and investing in cloud-based transportation management systems. But as they become more reliant on online systems, they're also becoming increasingly vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks. And speaking of technological news, Samsara has filed a suit against competitor Motive Technologies, Inc., claiming that they have engaged in patent infringement and false advertising. We'll also dig into possible changes the FMCSA is looking into for CDL testing. And if all that wasn't enough, we'll hit the latest recruiting and freight data and check in with Jason Miller for an update on his economic outlook. For Randall Reilly, I'm Joshua Miller, and this is the 30-Day Reset. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the 30-Day Reset. We're here at the beginning of every month to take a look back at what happened with recruiting and freight data to help you plan as you move ahead. We'll also hit a few news stories and check in with our friend Jason Miller from Michigan State University for his take on the state of the economy and what it means for trucking and recruiting at large. If you like our show, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new episode. You can also get your very own copy of all the data and news stories we hit today down below with this month's 30-Day Reset download. Now let's get to it and jump right in. We'll kick things off with Trucking by the Numbers, brought to you by Stratas, Strategize. Truck drivers are kicking the year off with a strong increase in job search activity. The search activity through the first half of January shot up by 31% month over month and is on pace to have the fourth highest search volume on record. Meanwhile, average click costs for the major advertising channels all showed between an 8% and a 19% decrease month over month in the first half of January. And the average cost per lead fell by 14% month over month in the first half of January, with all track driver types seeing double-digit month over month decreases in lead costs. December hire stats tell us that drivers were biding their time and waiting for the new year before making a switch. Hire costs and lead to hire ratios hit their highest levels of the year in December. The average CPH for company drivers increased by 32% in December, while the LTH ratio was at its highest level on record. Average owner-op CPH shot up 65%, while the LTH ratio hit the highest level since April of 2020. Now, historically, we look for costs to drop in January, and the data suggests that's exactly what's going to happen in 2024. The market for hiring looks strong at the moment, but the underlying fundamentals seem to indicate we won't see much of an increase in freight until the second half of 2024 at the earliest. And the hope for that seems less likely than previously thought. On the freight side of things, we've got a lot of red going on. Overall load volume was down 10% year over year and 30% under the 5-year average, while overall rates came in with a 6% year over year drop and 4% under the 5-year average. And it's much of the same when we look at the individual segments. Dry van load volume was down 9%, refrigerated down 12%, and flatbed load volume came in with a decrease of 10% year over year. Segment rates continue the trend, with dry van spot rates down 1%, refrigerated down 3%, and flatbed rates were down 8% year over year. Now, for a more in-depth breakdown of all the data covered today and a lot more, including all the 5-year averages for segment load volumes and spot rates, you can check out this month's 30-Day Reset download available for you below. Now, for this month's headlines. As trucking companies continue to embrace high-tech solutions, they are opening themselves up to greater cybersecurity risks. The National Motor Freight Traffic Association, or NMFTA's 2024 Trucking Cybersecurity Trends Report expects fleets to have to deal with ever-evolving attempts to compromise their systems. While around 90% of all hacks are through phishing and misconfigured networks, the NMFTA expects vishing, a call where a scammer pretends to be a credible organization, company, or even a coworker or boss, to become more frequent and common. Fleets should not sleep and do all they can to increase their cybersecurity. The NMFTA recently hosted a webinar event featuring Liminal Network's CEO Hillary Drake, who discussed an incident in which a retailer lost $1 million in apparel after the shipment was stolen following a precisely targeted spear phishing attack. The San Francisco-based Samsara has filed a lawsuit against their competitor, Motive Technologies, Inc. The suit alleges Motive Technologies engaged in illegal conduct, including patent infringement and false advertisement. Samsara stated in a release that they had previously asked Motive to cease the unlawful activities, but claimed the company has continued to introduce copycat products as recently as November of last year. Samsara is asking the court to legally recognize their infringement claims and is also seeking compensation for losses and damages. And the FMCSA is proposing changes to streamline the CDL testing. Among the proposed changes are allowing applicants to take a CDL test outside of their home state, permitting commercial learner's permit holders to operate a commercial vehicle on public roads without a qualified CDL holder in the passenger seat, and eliminating the 14-day waiting period required after gaining a learner permit before being permitted to take the CDL skills test. Of their proposed changes, they have said FMCSA believes the proposed changes will further address CMV driver shortages, enhance supply chain stability, and provide appropriate regulatory relief without impacting safety. The FMCSA is seeking public feedback on the proposed changes, which have a 60-day comment window from the time of their proposal, which was on February 2nd. Comments can be made at www.regulations.gov by searching for docket number FMCSA-2023-0115. And that's it for this month's stories. Now let's check in with our friend Jason Miller for his monthly economic update.
So what do we know today about the trucking and warehousing sector that we didn't know just a few days ago? Well, the answer to that is a lot, because the employment data that we tend to look at to get a sense of where supply dynamics are moving in both of these sectors underwent annual revisions. And what I want to just explain very quickly is, what does this mean? And so one thing to keep in mind with government data, unlike most industry data, is it tends to be revised multiple times, with the most important revisions being what we sort of call the first annual revision. For employment data, what happens is the monthly survey that is done, the data for that is essentially set to finalize data on unemployment insurance tax payments. So in other words, we set the survey based on administrative records. And that is done actually going back to March of the 2 years prior. So in this case, setting March of 2022's payroll data from the survey to essentially March 2022 administrative records that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has. And then what happens is employment is adjusted moving forward via an approach that the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls a wedge back. And we can see this here for truck transportation, where employment was adjusted down in the revised data by about 30,000. So in other words, we thought before we had about, give or take, 1.58 million individuals in trucking, and then we find out it's actually closer to 1.55 million individuals in trucking. So about a 2% decrease. Now, the reason this revision matters is it gives us a better sense for where we are in terms of the balance of supply and demand. On this chart, what I've shown is change in trucking demand as measured by the Trucking Ton Mile Index that I co-produced with Ian Bolling-Moore at the University of Tennessee, as well as that monthly employment data. Both of these series are set so that they're equal in the start of 2017 in January. What you can see is in the back half of 2017 and then all through 2018, ton miles, so demand increased more rapidly than supply. Those of you will remember that was a very strong bull market period. But as we moved into 19, ton miles start to decline, but employment keeps growing. Employment gains tend to lag where the market is at. We were in a freight recession that period, spot rates came down. By the end of 19, we'd moved very close to equilibrium, but then COVID hit. We can see ton miles plunge, much more so than employment, but by the back half of the year, the two were basically equal, but with a caveat. Freight networks were so discombobulated, so much freight was moving on the spot market that we had this record bull market cycle. As we moved through 2021, we still had this discombobulation, and ton miles and employment increased at the same pace, which is why the market stayed so tight from a shipper standpoint. But as we moved into 2022, and we really got into the second quarter, we started to see employment outpace ton miles. That's when spot rates started to drop. Then when ton miles started to fall in the third quarter of the year and employment didn't fall, we entered this deep freight recession from a pricing cycle standpoint. Right now, with Yellow Corp's failure in July and August, the aggregate level of supply is closer to demand than it has been since probably about the third quarter of 2022. but we still need about a 2 to 3% adjustment of those two series. So either we need demand to increase by 3%, supply to decrease by 3%, or some combination of the two to get those two series closer to each other, which would be the good indicator that we're about to enter the next bull market pricing cycle. So we still have a ways to go. Now, in terms of where those revisions took place and affected trucking employment, by far the biggest impact, over 50% of the revision, was felt in the general freight trucking local sector. That's going to be individuals who are driving box trucks for local delivery. That's going to be folks doing drayage work. So basically stuff that's staying within a metropolitan statistical area. We saw a big decrease here. This makes good sense because this is the sector that had seen the most growth since COVID, and the BLS's models that have to adjust for the creation and loss of new firms would have been a little out of whack with this. The second biggest revision then was to the general freight trucking long distance truckload sector, what we think of as over the road dry van, where it was a more modest 5,400 decline. No, trucking had a revision of negative 30,000. That paled in comparison to the even faster growing warehousing sector, where we saw a revision of negative 5% on employment. So essentially, we went from thinking we had about 1.9 million individuals employed in warehousing to about 1.8 million individuals employed. This is a very substantial reduction. It captures the fact that there was a far slower pace that new warehouses were opened than previously was thought. We know from data on warehousing starts that the last couple quarters, we've seen very soft starts in terms of new warehousing. That's going to be starting to cascade over into 2024 as other projects finish up into less freight for, structural pieces of steel that go into warehouses, steel paneling for the outside. It's going to mean less concrete and things like that. And we're already starting to see this show up in a little bit in an aggregate index of industrial production for construction products that the Federal Reserve Board reports. You'll see that series on a seasonally adjusted basis. It peaked in late 2021, early 2022, but it's been starting to slow down. That initial slowdown was very much the residential housing sector slowing, but now we're going to be seeing some additional headwinds from the industrial side slowing down. So tying that all back in, that's going to be another factor that's going to make it challenging for those 2024 freight volumes to increase as much as we would like them to see. But that's all for this video, and hopefully this has helped folks understand why those data may look substantially different than what they did previously.
Thanks so much, Jason. As always, if you'd like to dig into any of the data Jason just covered, those slides are featured and available for you in this month's 30-day reset download, which is again available down below. There's also a consultation link if you'd like to contact us and see how our team can work with you to accomplish your goals. And there's also a Strategize link there so you can learn more about the platform and even request a demo to see it in action for yourself. And that'll just about do it for us today. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next month when we're back with another all-new 30-day reset. See you next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching our show today. Hope you really enjoyed it. If you haven't already, what are you doing? Can you go ahead and click that subscribe button for me, and the like button, the share button, all the buttons, 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 buttons. And if you like our content, you can go ahead and watch even more of it, like that video right there. That one's chosen specifically for you. Or you can check out this one up here and take a peek at our Stratas Strategize platform. See you next time. Okay, bye.